Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
I think I've had just so many great mentors, so many great vets. You know, guys like even Kelly Olynyk, who played here, was someone who was very important in my growth, and obviously guys like Kat and Rudy and Nas, and there's so many stories. Nikhil, guys that I saw, especially Nikhil and Nas, they just gave me a blueprint that I saw in front of me. When Nas was with me when I first got there, and we'd just done the Rudy trade, the first couple of games of the year, he was sitting right next to me getting DMPs, and obviously everyone knows what happened after that, and that'll never happen to him again, and that's my goal, is to put myself in that position. And the same thing with Nikhil, when he got to us. Who knows what his future was in the league, but he took advantage of the opportunities that were there, and obviously just got paid this summer. So I've seen the blueprint, and I've been around so many amazing guys, coaches, staff, all of that. So it's kind of just using all those examples and to fuel me and to learn from them.
Hey, Barry Manning here. Welcome to a Friday edition of the Garden Report. That was Luka Garza a couple weeks ago when we talked to him at one of the Celtics community events. Noah Dalzell is here. And from The Athletic, Jon Krawczynski, who covered Garza, covered Josh Minott, the two newest Celtics this offseason. And both of them could have significant roles with this team, John, after mostly sitting on the bench in Minnesota. And I know that's what they were both excited to explore this offseason. And it's funny that they both found it on the same team.
Yeah, it's a really cool situation. I actually met up with both of them in Vegas after they landed in Boston, and they were kind of hanging out together. They were watching games. They were walking around the city together. And so it's neat to see both of them land on the same team and have a little familiarity with each other to be with. They both have kind of similar stories in that they are both really talented dudes that just were on a very good team and stuck behind more talented dudes. And so I do think that, they're both looking forward to having an opportunity to actually get some regular playing time and show what they can do. And I think I'm going to be really interested to watch how that all unfolds and what is in store for them, because I like both of them as people. And I think they are both good players who just need the right situation to be able to show what they can contribute.
Where are you at on them, Noah? Now we've had a couple months to think about where they could fit in with this team.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's so hard to evaluate all these players that have never played for the Celtics against one another. Because they have all been in different situations. They all have pretty limited on-court minutes. But I think I would lean just from having watched them both, kind of going back and looking at their time in Minnesota. I think I could see Josh playing more of a role in Boston than Luka. But I'm curious, John, as someone who has seen them play both in spurts, is there one guy that you think whose ceiling is like a little bit more? I don't want to say one of them doesn't have a ceiling, but like, is there a guy that you think has a more promising potential future in the NBA if it pans out?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're different when you look at them in terms of obviously different positions, but also I think one thing we know of the two of them, one of them has an NBA level skill set, and that's Luka Garza's scoring. Like, he is a very creative scorer, a great shooter. And so a lot of times the end of the bench guys or just guys who are trying to crack the rotation, what is one skill that you have that's going to get you on it? Is it your perimeter defense? Is it your rim protection? Is it your passing? Is it 3-point shooting? Is it scoring at the rim? What is it? And Luka Garza is just a scorer. So he can, I have no doubts about his ability, if he's able to play consistent minutes, that he'll score double-digit points and give them something that way. Josh Minott is different in that I think he's more of a kind of like a ball of clay that needs to be molded, but his ceiling may be a little bit higher. He's ultra athletic. He's really long. But we haven't seen him get any kind of consistent time to really showcase, what is one or two things that he can do that can really just help a team immediately and earn himself a role. But, he got a few short runs here in Minnesota. And I was always really intrigued because he in some ways is kind of the prototypical player for this day and age of, able to guard multiple positions, can get out and run. He actually shot it better than I thought he was going to last year. And so there's that's intriguing to me, that if he's put in the right system, if he's surrounded with the right people and given a role, maybe he can tap into more than what he's been able to show. Whereas Luka, I know kind of what he is, and I know that he can help at, as a scorer, where he has some limitations defensively and a few other things to go through. So Minott might have just a little bit more untapped potential, I would say, whereas Luka is a little more proven in that one area. And then it's about sort of making sure that you put him with the right lineups that help cover up some of the weaknesses that he has.
And I was so excited about Garza coming over here, because if you watch college when he was in Iowa, I mean, this was one of the best guys in college, period. And that doesn't always translate. There's all kinds of guys who have been National Player of the Year contenders and these great college players who just don't have the skill set for the NBA. And you imagine that was going to be the case with him. But you see the way he's leaned into his three. I think his body transformation has been pretty significant too. Like just seeing him at Summer League, as you mentioned there, he's skinnier. He's definitely shed some pounds and has put himself in position to move better. And that's still the big question with him, is whether he can, defend quicker players, where he fits in an NBA defense. They have a hole at center, and they need to figure out what they're going to do at that spot after losing 3 key guys this offseason. And that's what I think makes him more interesting in particular, because you almost know with some certainty that he's going to get a chance here. And he was in Detroit, didn't get a ton of a chance. Minnesota, as you mentioned, there's not a ton of opportunity there, but in the little pockets where he'd play some, and the chances, end of games, wherever he got the opportunity to get in for the Timberwolves, what did you see from him? What was the kind of growth you oversaw from him when he was getting those chances?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. First of all, just the body transformation. He and Naz Reid both kind of, as they came in, they had a little bit more weight on them, and you were just wondering exactly how they fit. But both of them have just really leaned out and changed their body composition, and that's a credit to Luka. He's an unbelievable worker, one of the hardest workers on the team, and so he kind of tried, I think, to do that, to maybe give himself a chance to play a little 4 if need be. I still think it is a real challenge defensively for him, but he's an incredibly enjoyable player to watch because he has more of that throwback.
Oh, did we lose him?
And so he's really crafty around the rim, because he's not going to just raise up and dunk on you. But he needs to use angles. He needs to use pump fakes. He needs to use a little bit of deception to get his shots off, and he does a really good job at it. He really knows, and he's smart, and he's understands where he needs to get his shots and how he can be effective that way. It was not uncommon when the Wolves had an injury to Rudy Gobert or Naz Reid or Julius Randle, that Luka would come in for an odd game here or there, and he'd put up 12, 14 points, and he'd give them a boost offensively in ways that really helped them. And so I think it will be on Joe Mazzulla and the staff to kind of figure out ways to make him to allow him to be offensively aggressive while also having enough people around him that can help defensively, so you don't really get kind of gashed at that end of the floor. But he can go in and score very efficiently, very effectively, and he is such a hard worker that, I mean, he was a fan favorite here. Fans will love him when you just see kind of the sweat that's pouring off of him and how hard he wants it and how hard he goes after it. But multiple 3-level scorer, great shooter, really crafty around the rim, can get to the line, knock down shots there. And so all in all, from that aspect of things, I really do want to see how he does in Boston, because there are minutes available here. He's just was part of the deepest front court rotation in the league, probably with Julius and Naz and Rudy, and then with Cat before that. So there just was not opportunity for him. And so for him to get out there, he'll put up some points for sure. And then it's just about mitigating the defensive issues.
What do you think his role is going to be, Noah?
I mean, like John said, this is as good as an opportunity as any, because who do we have now? Neemias Queta, Chris Boucher, and him. Like, that's really the three centers. I mean, maybe Xavier Tillman, we'll see kind of what they can get from him this season. So I feel like if you're a front court player on the Celtics, like you're going to get a shot at it. You're going to get a shot. He's probably all of them are going to start some games. Like, I don't think that there's going to be a guy who's just completely buried from the jump that never gets a chance to crack through. So it's just going to come down to like who actually kind of capitalizes on those opportunities. And honestly, like, I think they're going to want to see if this is somebody they can develop. Like, they sign these guys to 2-year contracts because I think they're hoping that one of these guys can break through and be a part of the group long term. So, is it going to be him? Is it going to be Josh? Like, I don't think it's going to be all of them, right? I think some of these guys are going to struggle, but the minutes are there. The thing that I'm curious about is, obviously in college, one of the things that he was known for is his 3-point shooting. And looking at his numbers in the NBA, he's like 31% for his career, but I would imagine small sample size in the sense that he's never really coming in with an opportunity to get a rhythm. I'm curious what you make of those numbers. Like, do you feel like they're not super representative of his shooting skills? Has it been a challenge adapting to the NBA line and the NBA opportunities that you have on the floor? Like, what's kind of that all about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a situation where he's struggling with the increased distance. I mean, I think he can really shoot it. I do think it's more of a product of just inconsistent minutes. Like, it's really hard to find a rhythm as a shooter when you're playing 5 minutes here, 8 minutes here.
156 shots in his career from 3.
Yeah, exactly. So now what I will tell you, like, what we saw here is when he came in, the shots went up. Like, I mean, there was, it was a little bit of a running joke. Like, the first time you see Luka pass the ball, let me know, because like he was a bit of a gunner in those times. And I understood it. Like, he wanted to come out and make a splash in the garbage time that he got or whatever. But in general, yes, I think that if he is afforded the opportunity to play a consistent role and consistent minutes, it doesn't need to be 30 minutes a night, but like, if he just is in a role where he is playing every night and knows when he's coming in the game and knows when he's coming out and knows where his shots are coming from and all of that, I think he will be able to settle in and he'll shoot a good percentage. I do think there were so many times in these last couple of years where anytime he got on the court, he looked at it as, I got to show what I can do here, because I don't know when the next chance is coming. And there's a lot of pressure on that. And, sometimes a lot of times he's playing in blowout games and not everyone's really locked in. And so, I just don't see that small sample size as really representative of who he is as a shooter. I do think that when given consistent minutes in a consistent role, you'll see him high 30s, probably somewhere 37 or higher, and knocking down that shot consistently and giving the Celtics some spacing on the floor and being versatile that way.
And this is one of the stronger things I feel going into camp, going into this preseason. I want him being bombs away from 3. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of fans are going to feel that way, because, they get wary of the 3, and especially with the Celtics, it's, all threes and all that. I want him shooting a lot of 3s for the reasons you said there, John. Getting comfortable out there, building a rhythm. He's good at it, I think. And so if he can actually put up a sizable number of attempts out there, I think you might actually see him float up to, I don't know whether it's going to be 33, 34, where he's going to live realistically, if he can, find some comfort out beyond the line. But I think that's going to be his role here, is pick and popping, taking open 3s. I don't think a lot of guys are going to be running out on his shots. And if those are falling for him, that's going to put him in a great position, even with some of the weaknesses in his game. So when they signed him, you tweeted out, and I want to ask you about this, that the Celtics have long been fans of Garza and that they've made inquiries with the Wolves before. I think that's about as positive of a thing you can read if you're a Celtics fan right now. The fact that the Celtics have liked this guy for a while, targeted him this offseason and are actually going to be able to play him, not just bring him in and have him sit on the bench and develop behind the scenes. What have you heard in terms of their interest in him going back? Because he's a guy who's gone from a two-way guy to a roster guy and has built his way up, with Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Bobby, is that, periodically through the last couple of years, Brad Stevens, and the Celtics front office would check in around trade deadline time, maybe occasionally in the summer. Hey, you want to part with Garza? Like, what would it take, kind of things. And I don't think it ever got, serious in terms of like really getting down to, trying to make a deal, because the Wolves really just did like him and valued having the depth there just in case they had injuries. But this is a case of Garza has been on the Celtics radar for a while, that they did see some potential in him. And especially, I think, you both alluded to it in the Celtics offense, the way that they play. I mean, they will never have to tell Garza to shoot. He will shoot. But like they like to bomb away from three. And I think that a big like him with the potential to shoot it from out there, is attractive to a lot of teams, but certainly to Boston in the way that they want to play. So there were several times I was told, throughout the last couple of years where, as the Wolves were having discussions around the trade deadline with all sorts of teams, that the Celtics would call in and check in on Luka and just say, hey, is there anything to be done here? Nothing ever happened, but it does show. And Luka knew that as well. When we spoke in Vegas too, of just like, hey, I know that they really do value me. And so I think that there is some optimism on his part that he is going to be afforded at least a real opportunity to earn minutes, because there are people in the front office that have liked him for a long time. And that makes a difference when you sign a deal like his and when you're trying to just really break into kind of a rotation and get settled in with something. And so I think that's a positive thing for Luka and his opportunity or his chances there.
And for his sake, it's a good thing that this deal didn't happen earlier, probably, because last year you would not have seen many opportunities. I mean, Neemias Queta, who was expected to start for the Celtics this season, wasn't even playing last year, right? Because you're dealing with Al Horford, Luke Kornet, and Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, it's not quite the Minnesota front court rotation, but it's not far off as far as the opportunities you're going to get there as the fourth big. So I'm thinking, like, if this move had happened a year or two ago, like, he might have had the same opportunities that he had in Minnesota, and now he gets a real chance. And also just the amount of 3-point shooting that the Celtics lost this offseason, like, they are going to have to change a little bit how they play, but they're also going to have to find people to take those 3-point attempts, because they're still going to get them up in some sense. And you lost Porzingis, you lost Drew Holiday, you lost a lot of guys that were very reliable from there. So I'm excited to see how it pans out. I think always the biggest question, I think, with any player is on the defensive end, because that has been kind of their MO, is that they don't have bad defenders on the floor really ever. Like Sam Hauser is the guy that teams always go at, and he's actually a pretty good individual defender. So I'm curious about how they're both going to hold up. And Josh, I've honestly heard such conflicting reports about how good his defense is. Like, I even talked to some Minnesota reporters that were like, he's a liability on the defensive end, and some that were like, he's actually a really good defender. So where do you land on his defense? And I know, again, it's been more limited samples, but does he have the potential to be a good wing defender in the NBA?
I mean, the tools are there. He has quick feet. He has really long arms. Like, when you guys are around him, I think, at least for me, it was early on, it was just like, wow, like, this guy is a legit 6'9". Like, he's all of that. And like his arms really do stretch, and he can block shots at the rim. Like, and I do think that he can also become a guy that does challenge people on the perimeter, and that can make it hard. The thing with Josh Minott here was always never really a doubt about the physical tools that he has. But does he have the understanding of scheme and the discipline and focus to adhere to responsibilities on that end of the floor? And that's what would consistently get him, kind of a quick hook from Chris Finch, was that if he had game plan mistakes, he would, there was one game last year where, Chris Finch put him into the game. and he gave up a backdoor cut for an easy bucket, and Finch took him out right away. And so when you watch him when he plays well, when he has it going, he does look like a real NBA player, like, because he can shoot it from the perimeter. It's a funky shot, but like the corner threes were actually okay sometimes when he was playing consistently. He can run like the wind. He can get out in transition. He can get up and finish at the rim. And so he has a lot of that, but I do think that there was a frustration, or not frustration, but just kind of the reason that he didn't get more playing time, in addition to being behind really talented guys, is that the Wolves did not see the focus from him and the paying attention to details, in game plans and things that they wanted to see. And so Finch kind of really stuck with more of the veteran players and a few of the young guys that he thought he could really count on to execute what he wanted out there, and Minott never really earned that trust from the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point here, and Brad Stevens brought it up in bringing these guys in, is that they're coming from a good team, a well-coached team, a system. Like, these weren't guys who were just playing minutes on a team that didn't have much direction. This is an organization that's been in the conference finals, has built one of the better defenses in the league over the last couple of years there. And I am curious what kind of environment system these guys were coming up in. Like, what were the things they were working on with these players? How does this team play defense? Like, what are these guys coming from in terms of a system? And I'm interested to hear how that compares to what they might be stepping in with the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting because I believe, I'm not Zach Lowe here and going to break down all the X's and O's that way, but like the way the Wolves play defense with Rudy Gobert is unique compared to what a lot of defensive systems are in the league nowadays. I mean, Rudy is a drop coverage big, and he also just covers up so many holes on the defensive end, almost all by himself, that it's sort of an anomaly the way that the Wolves would approach it. And they did have some issues. One of the things that gave them struggles and really has over the last couple of years is that they want to play defense one way with Rudy, but then if they go to Naz Reid at center, they kind of have to play a different way because Naz is not clear anywhere close to what Rudy is as a defensive player, and that's not where he excels. And same with Karl Anthony Towns. When he was here, they kind of tried to toggle between systems where, the way that you guard the pick and roll was different with Rudy versus Cat or Naz, and so many different things. And so now when both Luka and Minott go to Boston, where they do not have that Gobert style guy in the middle to play off of, it seems like they'll play more off of what Derek White does, what Jaylen Brown does, like, and kind of funnel things in a different way. And so how that kind of affects what the two of them are going to be capable of doing is going to be interesting to me. I think that, they're both going to a system that has a real identity as a Boston Celtics basketball, and I think they're going to have to adhere to that. And Minott will have plenty of stretches of games where you look at it and you go, wow, that's really impressive what he just did on both ends of the floor. And then he will have, he had in the past, at least, he had, mental errors or mistakes that caused him to get a little bit into the doghouse with the coaching staff here. So if he can kind of continue his maturity, and he's still really young, and be more disciplined and have a better understanding of what is being asked of him to execute, I think that he can absolutely be a player that contributes on a regular basis to the Celtics and is in the rotation. And the same with Garza. Garza will definitely give you everything that he has from a game plan specific standpoint, understanding what he's supposed to do. It's just you're going to have to help him do things that he can't do. And so that sometimes is a little bit easier to game plan around than the player who is out there where you just don't know if he's going to be on task the whole way or not.
And for Minott, Noah, I'm trying to think through what his role is. The Garza thing's easy, right? He's probably
Yeah.
going to be in the mix at center with Keita and Tillman and these other guys. With Minott, like when they first signed him and Boucher wasn't here, I'm like, okay, maybe he can play some small ball 5. He'll probably play mostly wing minutes, but I didn't have a great picture of where he's going to fit in. Now that Boucher's here, I even less have an easy time imagining where it's going to be. Like, I guess if they're starting Hauser, some backup wing minutes. If not, is he in like that Shireman Walsh mix there? Because they don't have a lot of sure-fired wings, but they do have a lot of wings who need minutes here. And so how Walsh, Shireman, Hauser, that whole thing's going to shake out, I think, is another interesting question going into camp, Noah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, how he compares to somebody like Jordan Walsh, who I would say also has the physical tools to be a great defender, but has sometimes, looked like a young guy out there, and made mistakes and not necessarily had the same level of discipline that some of the older players have had on the floor. So the way I'm viewing the wing battle is there's a bunch of guys and there's probably one rotation spot that is going to be filled. And Hauser is for sure going to be in the mix. Obviously, either he's going to be starting or he's going to be one of the first guys off the bench. But then between Baylor, Josh, and Jordan, like, I think it'll kind of depend on who finds their way within this new system that they're going to have next year. So that's the category that I've had him in. I don't know, maybe, a couple guys can go down. Like, I would keep thinking like Nimi might sprain his ankle on opening night. And now it's like, you don't have a lot of depth in the front court. So guys might have to play a lot of position just because they don't have the same luxury there that I think they have at the wing position still. That's still probably, even without Tatum, that's still probably their deepest position. So we'll see kind of how that shakes out. But I think there is definitely a clear pathway to minutes right now for Luka. And there's just going to be a little bit of a training camp / year-long battle, I think, for those backup wing minutes.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me, guys. Like, I mean, if Mazzulla wants to go small ball, I mean, Minott could play some small 4. I really believe that. So, like, it depends on the lineups that you're with. But
and he can block shots a little bit, can't
for
he?
sure he
From a
can.
weak side. Like, that's something they need.
Yep, absolutely. He can be and he is like, he is also he has a nose for the ball from a rebounding perspective. Like, he can go up and get it. And so he uses his length very well. And so I think from just that physical tool standpoint, I'm not incredibly familiar with Jordan, and I know what Shireman is, but Minott has all of the physical stuff to work with. And so it's a matter of putting it all together. But yeah, he could play some 4, I think, and some 3 and be out on the wing as well, and give you someone who can throw different looks at different teams.
All right, I want to take a quick break here to let the people know about Prize Picks, and it is a great time of the week to get into the action over on Prize Picks. And listen, we all play fantasy football. Our teams go downhill fast with injuries, or you're just picking the wrong guys, whatever it might be that tears down your season-long team. It's great to have this option over at Prize Picks to build a new team every single week. And that's why I love it. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and that's your team. Burrow, well, he's out now, but Barkley's one I love. More than 1 rushing touchdown. He's going to be in the mix to score on any given week for the Eagles. And then Josh Allen, more or less than 270 passing yards. I'm usually going more on that. So if you get your picks right, you could cash in. And they offer injury reboot. So if one of your player leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss. And they got the flex play, which means you can still cash out. Even if your lineup isn't perfect, you can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So you got women's basketball playoffs going on right now. You've got baseball. You can mix and match players from different leagues. There's so many great features over on Prize Picks that make it an enjoyable experience. I like going in the app just to see what they think players are going to do, especially during the basketball season. So it's the best way to cash in this football season. Which players are going off, which aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks, and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. I want to give a quick shout out to Game Time as well. If you're thinking about buying tickets the basketball games this summer, baseball playoffs coming up. You also got the WNBA playoffs going on as well. A lot of good stuff heading on over there, but the big thing right now, NFL games. Patriots playing the Steelers this weekend down at Foxborough. If you want tickets, head over there, use the code CLNS for $20 off. Terms apply with your first purchase over there. Go show them some love, to show us some love here as we head into our coverage season. Big time for us with game time. So if you go support them, you're supporting us here on the Garn Report. Love the app. Love the experience over there if you're thinking about buying tickets. So I want to ask you, John, we've been asking a lot of people around the league this, and you get so many mixed reactions. And I'm sure you've maybe heard some things from people with, just talking about the different teams this summer. Where are you at on the Celtics? Like, some people think this team's going to tank. Some people think this team's going to take a huge step back. Others, Noah, think they're going to be better than people expect. What do you picture from them without Tatum and, with all the losses this offseason, some of the new faces that are going to be taking over here?
Yeah, I look at it as a team certainly like in a transition year, and like probably, one that is not going to be considered right away a championship contender like they have been so often in recent vintages. But I also am one that kind of, I've covered this league for a long time. And so any teams that have real identity, that have, kind of a real kind of a backbone about them, I always am optimistic about them when they go through changes or have major injuries, of at least being able to weather the storm. I can't imagine that at the end of this season, unless, they have some other major injuries at the start of this year, that we're going to be looking at the Celtics and looking at them, well, they're just tanking for, AJ DeBanza or whatever the pick is coming out next year. I think that especially in the Eastern Conference, they're going to be a team that a lot of times you see that when a team loses a major player, and then even some other pieces, the parts really rally to try and show and prove something. And I think that Jaylen Brown's going to have something to prove. I think that Garza, Minott, guys like that are coming in, Boucher that are coming in, they are going to be motivated to play, and they generally will probably play harder than a lot of teams in the regular season night to night, and that can go a long way. So I would imagine that they're going to be, relevant in the Eastern Conference. Will they be a top 4 seed? I don't think so. But anything after that, I think, is up for grabs. Like, who do you like in the East that's going to be just major, impediments to them from like, seeds 6 through 9. I just don't know. So I would lean on the Celtics infrastructure, their coaching, their competitiveness in general, to say that it's going to be enough to be some in the conversation, maybe in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference, as we go forward here, barring some kind of major injury. I think they can be in the play-in mix, maybe even for maybe a 6 seed, something like that, if everything breaks right and the additions that they had break right. It's a vote of confidence in the Celtics and their infrastructure, but it's also kind of a reflection of what I think the East is, which is not a whole lot to write home about.
That's exactly where I am. So that's probably on the more optimistic end of the spectrum. But I think every conversation I've had with somebody from the organization or a player this offseason, I leave that conversation being like, oh, they're going to be good because they've sounded so confident. So I know that's what they're supposed to say. I know they're professional athletes and they're supposed to be, almost unrealistically confident, but it has actually impacted my perception of their abilities next season. So I think they're going to be that mix too, where they're kind of fighting for a playoff spot, hoping to kind of stay out of the play-in or in that range.
I think you put it a good way, John, that there's just not a lot of separation in the East. So unless there's injuries here, which could swing things either with other teams and the Celtics take advantage of that, or the Celtics suffer some injuries and they drop off that, it's going to be a big mix of teams. And I've like imagined this 5-team sandwich in the middle of like the Bucks, Pacers, Heat, teams like that, Sixers, if they're dealing with the injuries and then, guys in and out of the lineup, where it's just going to be, and you've experienced to some degree with the Wolves just because of how good the West is, being a game out of the 3 seed, but also a game out of the play-in tournament for pretty much the whole stretch of the schedule there. And that's going to make every game exciting because you don't know against any given team, any given night, whether they're going to win or not. And every game's going to matter that much more when the standings are that tight.
Yeah, I think, and I think Celtics fans, I would imagine, are going to go into this season with a kind of a cool new perspective. I do think, like you saw, as this sort of long stretch of success was going on for the Celtics recently, and even in parts of last year, you were hearing a lot of, man, the regular season doesn't matter, and let's just get to the playoffs. And there's a malaise that kind of sets in with just really consistent winning like the Celtics have enjoyed. And so now this team goes into this season as underdogs with a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I think with real stakes for the regular season, because if you do think you're going to be maybe in that play-in mix, maybe towards the bottom part of the Eastern Conference play, like every game does matter. You have to, really compete. And I think there's going to be a lot more for fans to learn night in and night out about this team, about these new players, about how everyone fits, as opposed to, so many of the last 3 or 4 years where it's just like, well, yeah, we know what we got with Tatum and Brown and White and Porzingis and everyone. Will be there in the end. So like, what does this all really matter? Now, this is going to be, I think, a little bit refreshing, even if there's going to be more losses that come with it. It's going to be a different kind of energy for the season, which is, that's fun.
You got any last questions here, Noah, before we let John go?
No, actually, I guess I'm just curious. What do you think about Minnesota's upcoming season? Where do you pen them?
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty bullish on them because I think that everyone that I've talked to over the years says it takes a full year to learn how to play with Rudy Gobert. And, and so I think that, having a trade where Dante DiVincenzo and Randall come in right before the training camp opens, it takes a long time to figure things out. And they're pretty much the same roster outside of Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming back. And so I think that continuity is actually going to help them. And so I expect them to be in the 50-win territory, low 50s, and kind of competing for a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, and then see what happens. The West is really, really competitive, but I also think there's a lot of parity in it. So I think it could go either way if they stay healthy. I like their chances of having a really good year and another, trying deep playoff run.
And it's so crazy to think about how late that trade was in the offseason.
Yeah.
A year
2 days
ago,
before training camp opened. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was just such a drastic change for that organization and the whole way they play, and, swapping one star for another. And all things considered, it started rocky, but it finished strong. And I think when you're talking about all these teams and there's rising teams and falling teams out west, this is the one that's been about as steady as you can imagine in terms of the regular season success, and then being there in the late stages of the playoffs. And you can get excited about the Lakers and some of these other teams, Nuggets loaded up, but this team's just rock solid, and they just play that way. And Edwards is going to keep getting better, and I almost feel like they get overlooked to some degree because there's just not a lot of turbulence there. Like, they've just been pretty steady.
Yeah, which is like the anti-Wolves. I mean, forever and ever, they were like a revolving door at GM, at head coach, at players, and it was so inconsistent. And now they really have settled in to a nice identity. And so it's been interesting to watch. I think they're really well coached. I think they have a great front office. And now they have a really cool mix of, you have veterans like Rudy Gobert and Conley, Mike Conley and Julius Randle, but then you also have young guys like Anthony Edwards and Jane McDaniels and Naz Reid. And so it's young, it's old, it's kind of in the middle. And I think the pieces fit together fairly well. And so, it's a team that knows who it is now. And I think that's going to really help things going into this season.
Yeah. And we started off the show with Garza talking about all those guys he learned from, Naz Reid, Alexander Walker, guys who had to sit, guys who built into bigger roles. So that's what they've done there in Minnesota. And like you said, it's crazy to think that that's a system and an organization that people look to at this point as a model of success, but that's where they're at. So we're excited to follow your coverage of it. You're one of the best beat guys around the league. So check it out at The Athletic. Go subscribe and go follow along with Jon Krawczynski as he covers the Timberwolves this season. Training camp less than 2 weeks away. Thanks for stopping by, Jon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for you guys to get to know Luka and Josh as people, because Luka is incredibly thoughtful, really smart.
And Josh is funny as hell.
Josh is the funniest guy ever. I'm telling you, like, he is so funny, and he will crack you up with some of the stuff that he says. He's got just a bright personality. He's really smart.
They needed that. They lost a lot of personality this offseason.
He's got all sorts of personality. So if he is able to get a role on this team, I think he's going to become someone that everyone really enjoys. And so both guys are really good dudes. I'll be watching from afar, but I'm looking forward to you guys all getting to know them, because they're great. But yeah, Josh is hilarious. So hopefully he gets a chance to show that sense of humor.
Yeah, they had all the new guys over at Fenway taking batting practice, and he was the only one who could swing a bat. So I'll give him that. Thanks, Jon. We'll talk to you later in the year.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, so we are less than 2 weeks away from Media Day, Noah. I want to start to think about some of the questions going into camp that are going to be most interesting here. And I think we already have a great one that we've been thinking about for a couple weeks now, and I'm looking forward to more than probably anything else on Media Day. And it's finally meeting, seeing, hearing from Anthony Simons, because they put out a video of him working with the coaching staff and talking about where he's at. And it was this NBA feature that they did on him at the Celtics gym there. And that, to me, finally, even though it was heading in that direction, I think that for me was the confirmation that, all right, Anthony Simons is going to be starting training camp with this team and being part of what they're doing to begin this year.
Yeah, I think that's still the plan, and obviously, like, as every day that passes, the guys that are on the current roster are more likely to be there on opening night. And so I do think that at a point in the offseason, it did seem like Anthony Simons was probably not going to, be a part of the team's future. But here we are now. It's safe to assume that he'll at least start the year with Boston, if not finish it. And I've talked to people around the organization that are like super, super excited to have him around. They've heard great things about him from his time in Portland. And I think there's a level of, like, he's kind of flying under the radar right now as we're projecting where this team's going to land next year, as, even just the fans' discourse around who they have, and Derek's going to have a big year and Jalen's going to have a big year. Like, there's a guy that's a really kind of perennial 20-point per game scorer that has just not been, I've been part of the problem. Like, we haven't really been talking about him that much. So he's going to be a big storyline to follow. I think the other thing that I'm curious about is just how the team is talking about expectations for this year, because
that was on my list too.
Yeah, like we're so used to everything being about a title and championship expectations and going back to back, or winning with this core. And obviously, it doesn't seem like they're going to be a championship team. But how are they going to talk about it with the media, with the public? Like, I'm not sure. So that part is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple different levels to that. I think the players and Garza talked about this, I think, at Summer League, that there's a refreshing lack of expectations here, that, people aren't going to be expecting them to be very good. I think the way he put it was that they've been the hunted for so long, and now they can be the hunter. And I do think there's some truth to that they're going to be playing with zero pressure. Maybe some guys with real stakes, like Pritchard, if he's trying to move into a starting role, Jalen trying to carry this team. Like, those guys are going to have some pressure on them at the top, because things are going to fall on them. But for other guys like Garza and others, like, it's just going to be the freedom of being able to play openly. And that's something Kata talked about too, when I asked him if, what his message from Joe has been for him, and it's just to play freely. And I like that. I hope that's actually how Joe coaches this year, is to let guys play through some mistakes, let them develop, trust guys. Like, I think that's going to be crucial this year, is that they just roll with things and try to make them better as the year goes on. Because to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, Noah, I feel like they're probably going to struggle a little bit early on. I like guys stepping into new roles. The schedule looks tough early on, as we've talked about. To me, life without Tatum, like, he's just been there for so long every single night. I think that's going to be shocking to deal with early on. So I don't see them getting off to a hot start. I do see them settling in and stabilizing as the year goes on, but I do think it's going to be challenging early on.
Yeah, for sure. And you're gonna have to figure out a new play style. I think we're gonna see them cut a lot more. I
That's
think you're
another
gonna
thing we're
see.
interested to hear about. And I do sense that they're going to change things up.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably because they have different personnel. Like I think that's the part that we've kind of always underrated about why do they shoot a lot of threes? Like is Joe Mazzulla just obsessed with threes or is he obsessed with maximizing the personnel on his roster? And right now there's just not going to be that same amount of high volume 3-point shooters. And so there's still
So you
some
think there'll
guys
be
that
less
are
threes?
I think there will be a little bit less threes. Yeah. Not so they're not going to all of a sudden be near the bottom of the league in that category because I think the numbers are still the numbers. But yeah, you lost out on a bunch of guys that were like Tatum was a high volume 3-point shooter. Porzingis, Drew Holiday, both elite from beyond the arc. So you inevitably have to figure out where you're going to get those shots. And I think you're going to see Derek and Payton are probably once again one of them is going to set the mark for most threes in a season this year because they are both in the mix for that last year. And who finished with it? Derek finished with the most threes ever in a season, right? So that's going to happen again. But I think overall, like you lost shooting across the roster, so you're going to have to find ways to play differently. I don't know how open they're going to be about that because we know Joe Mazzulla likes to keep his cards close to his chest when it comes to basketball conversations. But I'm sure it will be alluded to that stylistically some things are going to change as well.
Yeah, I think that's almost certain. I think he's talked about in the past how they've adjusted to personnel that they've had. So I think that's how he's going to react to that question, which is almost certainly going to come up. I think the threes will be a question. The personnel that they have now. The other thing that I almost think it's right in front of us, so I don't think it pops as that big of a story, but it maybe is the biggest story of media day at the very least, is we're going to talk to Jason Tatum for the first time since the injury. And he's
Is that for sure?
I'm almost certain he'll talk on media day. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. I think that's when you hear from him and then he goes back to the training room and then we don't see him for months. So I'm almost certain we're going to hear from Tatum on media day. And we know how he talks. I don't think we're going to learn a ton. I don't think he's going to forecast a return or not this season. I think he's just going to say it's day by day and, things have been good so far and blah, 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 blah. So I don't think we'll have any surprises there, but I just want to hear from him, what it's been like, how it's gone so far, where he's at on playing or not this year. Maybe he will give at least a hint there. Like, he is a guy who loves to play. And I think if he comes out and says, I'm working hard toward playing this year, that's going to be like, whoa, because it's going to be frustrating to some degree. Maybe you'll enjoy it. No, I think it's going to get annoying for me. The daily, Tatum's on the bike. He's in the gym. He's lifting a weight. Like every single time we see Tatum this year, it's going to be a viral video of him doing some mundane thing and being taken as a major sign of progress. It feels like he's on great track right now, just based off everything we've seen and heard. But we're still so far away from the point where he's going to play. And I think you said it on your podcast. It's pretty amazing that he's walking around and climbing the stairs and doing all this stuff right now, but he can't get on the court. There was some post, I forget who posted it, of like Tatum's on the court. He's not doing anything on the court right now. And I don't think he's even close to that, but I just can't wait to hear from him because we haven't heard from him since that day at MSG in May.
Yeah. And honestly, like I thought he was going to at some point this summer do a sit down, like podcast with somebody that he has a close relationship with in the broader media space, but he hasn't done that. So we really haven't heard from him. I think the NBA posted like a 30-second social clip of him saying that it was really hard when he tore his Achilles and he's, kind of been pushing through it. Like it was very, very limited. And that's the only time we've really heard him describe the injury on his terms. And obviously big contrast from Tyrese Halliburton, who's been really in the public eye this summer and has done lots of media and sitting courtside at games and everything. So he's a private guy. I'm not surprised that that's the direction that he went. I honestly didn't think he was going to speak on media day. So maybe that's just naive of me, but I thought he actually won't be speaking. So we'll see how it pans out. Certainly we would love to hear from him. But that will be on everybody's mind. And you're right. I think just like we had Porzingis watch for the past 2 years with whatever ailment he was dealing with, does he look sick? Does he look like his legs doing well? Like, I think that it's going to be a little bit of that with Tatum, which is a little bit laughable considering he is so far away from returning to the court. potentially it might already be off the table for the season and they just don't want to say that. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not willing to sign off on it being off just yet. Like, even if it's like probably not going to happen, he might mentally want to be thinking like, I'm working towards coming back this year, just as a way to like stay engaged in his rehab, even if the people around him are kind of like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, I find that so interesting because the Pacers did rule Halliburton out. Part of that's the timeline. He tore his, handful of weeks later, or maybe even a month later. So that might be why that is. Obviously, we've heard comments from the team about making him put them in position to make a tough decision. So they haven't shied away from the fact that it's possible that he could.
Nobody's
be
ruled him
back
out.
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that interesting, whether it's just for motivating Tatum and keeping him on track, or whether they actually think he has a chance to play this year. It probably could be a little bit of both. Corrales came on the show a few weeks ago, and I saw him talking about it again today on with Forsberg. He's like certain that Tatum's going to try to play this year in March or April, whatever that ends up being, just to get back on the court, coming off the bench, whatever it is. That's not where I'm at. I'm definitely in the camp of take it slow. There's probably not going to be a rush to do it at that point in the season. And I don't even know if if they're good, he'll come back. If they're not, he won't. I think it's all going to come down to where he's at physically. So I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I've definitely leaned toward not seeing them this year too. Maybe I'm wrong about that, just based off the procedure, timing, like you've reported, and how far the surgery has come, along with the way he works. And I know there was some talk on the radio with Zolak and Bertrand there about how often he's been in the gym and all that. So we knew that this was going to be an interesting case with an injury like this, just because of his work ethic and what he, does with his body and how careful and meticulous he is with that. Like, this is definitely a guy in a unique position to come back quickly. But is that in the best interest of the team long term? I think Joe's probably not going to give us a lot of insight on that, but he's going to get a lot of questions throughout the year about where Tatum's at.
Yeah, that's the bummer with Joe kind of representing the entire organization, is that like we really shouldn't be asking Joe about
what's he gonna say this year
Tatum's
when we have
Achilles.
him. I haven't seen him.
He's gonna say I have no idea, because he's not gonna have much of an idea, because I don't think anybody is gonna know for most of the year.
That's what you've always said with Joe. I don't believe that, but
What have I said?
you've said that he actually doesn't know. I think he knows.
I don't think he knows like the minutia of a daily recovery process.
Either
I
that
think
or he
knows
doesn't
the
want
guy.
to know.
Yeah, I think it's at the end of the day, like, this is why I wish like the structure of the way we could ask questions would be like, it'd be nice if we could talk to a medical person once a month and like get like actual answers to things. Because Joe's not going to say the wrong thing, so he's just not going to say anything at all, and I totally get that. But yeah, we're probably not. I'm in the camp that we're probably not going to see Tatum next season. I'm intrigued that Corrales feels so strongly about that. I know he said that right away, but to me, the biggest thing is not about whether he's going to be able to play. It's just, when you look at the guys that have the best long-term outcomes, like, there is a correlation with sitting out longer before making your return. So that's the main thing for me, is, he might be cleared and able and like feeling good, but if there's some science pointing to like, hey, if you come back in the fall versus now, that could actually impact your career trajectory, then like, that's all that matters. And I don't know how legit that science is. Like, it's just a couple of cases that I've examined. So I'm sure they'll have like actual experts in their corner discussing whether or not that's going to impact his trajectory long term.
Yeah, and experts say, I think once you're healed and you're good and you're cleared, there's no benefit to sitting out even longer beyond that. And in fact, you probably do have to come back and find your rhythm and find your comfort playing again. I just don't know how you ramp someone up in the middle of the season. Like, they don't practice. They don't have many opportunities for him to get live action outside of the games. So do you just throw him into a game and let him ramp up that way off the bench in small minutes, whatever it might be? That's probably what it looks like if he comes back this season. Whereas if he comes back next year, you have training camp and, the full fall to get ready in preseason and all that. So I think that's where that's going to fall, given the timing of him coming back. And especially if it's playoff time and they're heading into a playoff series, I don't know how you just jump right into that either. So that's why I lean no, but we'll see where he's at on media day, hopefully. The other thing is the starting lineup, and that's a big debate this offseason. We're not going to get the answer on media day. We probably won't until we see some preseason games, and that'll probably be a mix of different lineups too. And that's where my mind's actually going now. I don't think we're going to see one set lineup that's out there every night this season. Joe always talks about matchups and all that, but it's mostly been the same guys out there when they're available. I actually think we're going to be seeing some mixing and matching of lineups this year. Hauser starting sometimes, I don't know if Pritchard and Simons actually trade off. That might be one that actually sticks and stays, just given where Pritchard's at. And, I've been pretty adamant that Pritchard should start there. And then the center thing, like I'm high on Cada, but do they want to try different things there? Small ball with Boucher, full small ball. Like there might actually be some different looks that they go to there if Cada doesn't click right away. So that's the developing take I have, is that we're going to see a bunch of different starting lineups this year. And preseason will give us a look at a number of them, because I'd say to some degree, Pritchard Simons is a battle. Center's wide open. And the 4, even though Boucher is a good bet there, is probably open too, based on whether they want to play bigger or smaller.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think we're going to see a lot of different lineups. When I talked to Pritchard last month, that was kind of one of the things that
I was so
surprised
surprised he doesn't care whether he starts or not. Maybe he does and doesn't want to say it, but that
to be honest
surprised me.
with you, like obviously there's media training and these guys are not going to say something inflammatory in the off season, but the way that he said that, I actually was like, he really doesn't care. Like he's not going to put his energy towards this. I think he wants to finish games. I think he wants to be one of the team's like go-to guys, but I think he also experienced firsthand how important you can be coming off the bench. And he had a highly impactful season last year, and I think he can grow from there in either direction. So it came off very genuine. Like he kind of laughed when I asked him about the starting lineup thing and was like, I could care less. We're going to see different combinations, and that's not the priority. And I think personally, I find the starting lineup discussion so boring, because how much discourse did we have around Al Horford coming off the bench when Drew Holiday and Porzingis were acquired? And how many times did we see Al
Well, that's
come
when
out?
you got an abundance of talent. Now it matters, because I think you got to figure out who's good and who's not.
I mean, we know Pritchard's good, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter if he's coming off the bench or starting. That's my point. Like, we saw guys are going to be injured. Guys are going to be in and out of the lineup. Like at the end of the day, even the guy that's selected to not be in the optimal 5 is probably going to start quite a bit, because that's just the nature of how things go. So I'm more curious about who makes the rotation and who doesn't. And I think there's a bunch of guys that are on the fringe of, like, is Jordan Walsh a rotation player this year or not? Like that I'm curious about, because that actually matters for those guys and matters for the outlook of this team. But to me, starting is just kind of a technicality at a certain point, and it just becomes this big thing that in actuality, like we've seen, you can be coming off the bench, but actually being like one of the top most important contributors.
Yeah, and the last one's Joe. Where's he at? We actually haven't heard from him a ton this offseason, so I'm super intrigued at what his mood's going to be. He was a little downtrodden on that Edelman podcast, just because of the losses, and that's understandable. But will he have a new optimism and outlook for this season? Will he even have expectations? Sometimes he goes in that direction and says, I don't have any expectations for this team, just not want to even put that out there. So I'm super curious to see what his outlook's going to be for this group. And you mentioned the stylistic changes. I definitely think that'll be a topic of discussion on media day. Different guys and where he's at on them. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting media day interviews per usual, because I think Joe's now 3-4 years running one of the more intriguing characters on this team.
Yeah, I think Joe is feeling good about this team, this group. I think he's going to be feeling confident. I'm less curious about how he's feeling and how he's communicating behind the scenes. I'm more intrigued by how he's going to convey that to the media and what he's going to want out there. So that's the part, like, we know how Joe has kind of conducted himself. Like, does any of that change in a year with different expectations and different outcomes? Honestly, I think we're going to see the same Joe that we've seen, just regardless of what the record and the standings look like. So definitely curious for it, for sure. But I get a very strong sense of confidence from the organization right now that is higher than where the media is, higher than where the fan base, higher than where the city is. And that might just be like how you have to carry yourself. Like I said, when we had John on, like it might be how you have to carry yourself to be a winner, to be in professional sports. But I sense that it's a little bit like they actually think that we're a little bit underrating them. So we'll see how that pans out pretty quickly. So,
yeah, I think we've been fair with where we're at on them. I think there's obviously going to be a step back given what they lost. Now, how big of a step back is that? That's going to be the question here, and maybe some other guys step up and take advantage of that opportunity. But as John said, that makes this year intriguing. Like the fact that you're just not going to know any given night whether they're going to win or not. You don't know who's contributing. You don't know what the stories are going to be day in and day out. Like this regular season, to me, even if fans don't love it, and I think fans are still trying to figure out where they're at on this. They understood what they did over the summer. they're intrigued by what's going to happen. Some want them to stink, some want them to be good. But I think everyone's just trying to figure out what is this going to look like now. And we're going to get the first indication of that on Media Day on the 29th. We're less than 2 weeks from that. It's a week from Monday as we record here on Friday. And we will, of course, have that streaming live here on CLNS Media and plenty of preview material over the next week to come here. Check out Noah's podcast. You got Boston Talking Celtics every week. And a new WNBA show, Noah, which you just put the first episode out of.
Yeah, subscribe. WNBA Today on CLNS. I'm going to have regular coverage throughout the postseason. Been a really, really fun stretch of WNBA basketball. So for those of you that have been asking me to do more WNBA coverage on my podcast, we have a whole new channel, pressers, analysis, interviews. They're all going to be over there. So you can find that on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple.
Makes a lot of sense this time of year. Some great games right now. The Seattle-Vegas series was awesome. Golden State had a thrilling run, even though they fell short. And there's going to be more to come there. Minnesota's great. There's a lot of big teams contending, vying for that championship right now. New York. So check it out. CLNS Media, Celtics All Access as well. Red Sox Clubhouse. Are they going to make the playoffs? I don't know after this week, but we have all coverage over there of the stretch run. Obviously, I've been over at Fenway a lot. Only one more home series to come next weekend. They're on the road right now starting tonight, so check out our coverage over there. Patriots Press Pass, those guys kill it every single week. They got the Steelers coming into town on Sunday. The Pats are favorited, which surprised me, but maybe that's where this thing's going. More wins, more success this year for them. So check out their channel over there. And Bruins camp's underway down in Brighton, so check out Bruins Rinkside over there for all the coverage of them. Garden Report, Celtics CLNS on Twitter. Noah Dalzell, Real Bob Manning. You can find us over there as well, tweeting away. And we'll be back next week with more shows. Maybe the full crew will come in and preview the Celtics training camp. Jimmy, John, and all them charades. So looking forward to talking to them and getting this thing going again. It's been a long off season. Not a lot of positive stories coming out of the rough playoff loss there, but as we said, it's going to be interesting day to day following this team this year. And I think it's going to be fun too, despite some ups and downs. So you know what we do over here. It's year 6 of the Garden Report as it stands here, and 3rd year for Noah, 6th year for me, I think, covering this team. So looking forward to getting going here, and we will see you all next week. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's
Yeah.
fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke